Good morning, everyone. This is Coach Wildman, and this is another session of In the Fifth Set. And today we have a special guest, Ruth Nelson, who is a legend in USA volleyball, collegiate university coach from many teams, but also you've seen her on Art of Coaching. You've seen her at the Final Four presenting, and the founder of Bring Your Own Parent program. So, Ruth, thanks for joining us.
Oh yes, I'm excited because I just did an event in Poland in 5 different languages, and I'm going to be in Belgium. I'm doing one in Germany, and I'm also doing one for the CEV for all Europe. So
awesome.
I've been pretty busy.
So, are you good friends with John Kessel?
John and I've known John's first wife.
Okay.
Laurel was my roommate on the national team, and she and I played together. We coached together. She coached in New Mexico when I was at Houston when Long Ping was her assistant. So Laurel and I go back because we played on the national team together way before you were born.
Fair enough.
That's a few years ago.
Right on. Yeah, no, I've actually brought John Kessel up to Canada to do some stuff and stuff like that. And I know he has a huge heart for working with younger athletes and getting, as many young athletes into the game as possible. And it's not about winning or losing. It's about just like growing the sport and all that stuff. So the Bring Your Own Parent concept, where did you come up with this idea? How long have you been running with this? And tell us about the program.
Well, I've been doing it since you've been born. So I could do a little bit quicker than that. But after playing on the national team and then coaching in college, which I was at Iowa, Houston, LSU, and I started George Williams with Jim Coleman, who was my first mentor. And so, you kind of go back, and actually Russ Rose was in my badminton class.
Okay.
And then I played and practiced on the men's team with Mick Haley. And so you kind of go back, and everybody's in. Doug Beal was at the time. We did beach and all that. And so when I started getting close at Iowa, I also worked for Special Olympic Eunice Kennedy Shriver for 18 years, developing their international volleyball program. And I always have had I've always said, hey, why is it that someone that has my experience at all levels, and I've been fortunate enough to have had Flo Hyman, Rita Crockett, and Rose Majors play for me at Houston, and I got a chance to be with Daniel Scott, 5-time Olympian, when I started my Baton Rouge Volleyball Club in Louisiana. And I said, why is it that nobody really wants to spend time with kids? Well, I grew up around learning how to negotiate with kids when I babysat when I was 7 and 8 years old. And when you're 7 and 8 and you've got, boys that are 5 and 6, you got to figure out how to get them to do stuff. So I always learned how to give them ice cream so they go to bed. So, you learn those negotiating tools. And I always felt like that the kids deserved the same level of training or exposure than any other level. So when I really kind of finished with Special Olympics, I directed the sports and corporate marketing for internationally. When I came back to Dallas, I had a couple parents say, hey, you want to train? And I said, nah, I don't really want to do any volleyball anymore. I just, you get to a point where you say, okay, I got to look at the marketing side. I was in the prepaid phone card side, when people didn't even know what that was. And I was doing a Julie Foudy prepaid phone card, or, I was doing the back end voiceovers for that. So I've always been into the marketing side also. And I said, okay, I'll do it, but I don't want you to question what I'm doing. I don't want to collect the money. I don't want to reserve the courts. I don't want to do any of that. And I need all the parents to help shag balls. So I said, okay, that's a great start. So in 2003, we actually did a demonstration at the ABCA that was held here in Dallas.
Okay.
I'll never forget, because Andy Van Caspi walked past me and he goes, Ruth, you know what? I don't know. He said, he said, I don't know how you're doing it. He said, but it's great you're doing it. And at that time, I started Volley Kids and Volley Tots, TOTZ, and that was in 2003. I had an 18-month-old shuffle and jump and block. And I learned that she wouldn't do it unless I had some of the other 7 and 8-year-olds. So at that time, I said, you know what, all of this always happens. So I started in that, and Ebony Nwanabu, who played at USC and then transferred to Texas, 4-time All-American. I started her when she was 4.5 years old. And I thought, you know what, Kids don't have any habits. It's like I asked Russ one day, I says, you don't believe in swing blocking. He says, Ruth, do you ever try to change someone who's been doing it for 70 years? And so it's reinvented the same idea is, why not give these kids, just like my background is in physical education. I have a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in physical education with a master's in the statistical analysis of passing and serving in men's volleyball in the Midwest under Jim Coleman. So you put all that together and you say, okay, I have a teaching background because you definitely don't coach the kids at 5 years old. They barely can walk and chew gum. So in 2003, I said, okay, let's start this. We did a demonstration. We played under the name of Flo Hyman because she played for me at Houston, and we did a fundraiser for her. And I coached a rec team. And in Dallas, they had one facility. Now they have 53 facilities in Dallas since 1995. Each one of those main facilities make about $1.8 million 3 times a year because they start at kindergarten all the way up through 18. So I went out and I watched a little bit and I go, oh, this is great. Serve, make a point. Serve, oh, they pass it back, make a point. I go, what's happening? They're not really learning the game. The net was low enough at that time I could probably jump over. I can't jump over it now. But I said, okay, I'm going to train a team and play this. Well, all of a sudden, each parent paid me $30 it was a 10-week program. So I got $300 for that. All of a sudden they made the rules and they said you can't pay coaches anymore. Oh, all of a sudden, just because I was getting paid $30, then about 5 years later, they went ahead and allowed people to be paid because it wasn't so much about getting a lot of money. It was just the parents wanted to give you something. So I'm still building these kids and testing this out. In 2007, I started directing a program at IAD, which is a $42 million facility, which TAV now houses out of there. But a friend of mine from Cuba built that facility predominantly for basketball, but he loved the Cuban women's program. So I said, okay, now what's missing? Missing is the parents, because if you're at 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, guess who's going to be playing at home? It's going to be the parents, maybe a brother and sister. And I said, okay, let's do this. Let's come up with something. And I said, bring your own parent. Okay, everybody says, oh, but what? We don't want to come. We want to drop our kid off. And I said, no, you don't think that you can't have 1 hour a week that you can spend with your kid? And then when that started, I extended it, then I trademarked it, and then I came up with certifications, and then all of a sudden I got phase 2. Some coaches don't want the parents involved, or some parents can't be there, or some parents don't want to be there. So whether I think it's a great idea for them to be there or not, there are still coaches that still want to learn that methodology at 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 8, because they can't do things when they get to 9 and 10. I've got kids that have been with me for 5 years that are playing club. They pay $4,100 at age 9.
Interesting.
Think that, $4,100. They pay me $280. One parent, I said, why are you doing this? She goes, because we learn from you and we get the reps from club. I go, then I think I need to add another zero to my $280. So I started a program called Go Kids. So what that is, that's without parents. So it's basically 7 and under, 8 and up. You're still teaching the same methodology. And what it did was it allowed a club program who maybe for whatever reason, it doesn't matter the reason, they wanted to know how to train and teach that age group and how to organize them. But my B.Y.O.P program is really about teaching fundamental skills and movement. I call it the physical elements of performance and the fundamental skills of volleyball. So I created 2 online courses with Art of Coaching, and somebody says, oh my goodness, Ruth, how did you get your home training program out before COVID? I said, I already had it out. And when a kid comes to you after practice, think of this. Coach, what do I need to do before next week? What should I practice on? The parent, Ruth, what are we supposed to practice with our kids? So I developed a home training program, which basically includes an 8-week program. You watch the video, you take 3 appropriate age questions, you answer it, you watch it, you put up your chart on the wall, you keep track of it, and the kid has all the stuff they need to be practicing at home. So that was part of the Go Kids program, but it's a home training program. And I actually certified people in all the programs that I'm running.
Interesting. So is Bring Your Own Parent kind of like a franchise, a franchise, if you will? So clubs would purchase this program from you to use for their club athletes.
An instructor would come into Dallas
Okay.
for 20 hours, and they actually get to work directly with parents and kids. Now, all my other courses are all online certification.
Gotcha.
But that particular course, and it's interesting, I've been certifying people since 2015. They said, if you take that element out of being able to see how you, Ruth, actually work with a kid and a parent, when a kid will not get up behind the parent's legs and they get out and they shuffle with you, that's something that you don't see. And I have felt like that is unique to Bring Your Own Parent. And yeah, they actually, they pay a licensing fee.
Sure.
They get trained. They have a 300-page manual. They have resource to me to pick up the phone to get on Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
And they have their own website, and they have their own area. Like I've got Chicago North. I got Chicago South.
Interesting.
I've got Southern California. I've got Northern Seattle. So I have different cities with different instructors. And then because of that, I started really the third phase is what I call B.Y.O.P on the go, which is my live video that I started last week. And then this coming week, I have a 9-year-old that I've been training since March. She knows the Chinese. She's the one that's going to talk about the movie Leap. And her two idols were Long Ping and Flo. And she did not know how much Long Ping idolized Flo until she read the article that Long Ping wrote after Flo passed away. So I decided to have BYOP on the go because it has a lot to do with a lot of things that people are not addressing. The fact is this, you cannot play at 5 years old. You can put a balloon up and I've had a lot of people ask me, well, Ruth, why don't you come and run this program? And I said, I think it's great what you're doing, but it's not for me. I believe in teaching basic movement patterns and fundamental skills, just like my elementary school teaching in undergraduate school is, you had to learn to be able to move, and you might not be able to, say, skip in volleyball, but the kids need to learn how to do those things because PE classes don't really function here in the United States like they used to.
Right.
So I felt like that movement pattern. I use a lot of puffers. I started using those 2 years ago, and I use them with my 18-year-olds. I use them with the players that are playing professional, and they come back. It's a lot easier on your arm. They're squiggly. They're easier for the 4 and 5-year-olds. I'm training 4-year-olds virtually. And so you get, I learned, number one is when I first started in March, I had 16 families. I go, no way can I do that virtually. Sarah was on her scooter going to her neighbors. One parent was driving out of the driveway, all those distractions. So I've learned that if I consolidate, I can only do like 4 that are around the 4 age group, but I can also do about 8 when you're talking about 7 and 8-year-olds. And if I have them take both courses, and then they can come online because they have to have some type of familiarity with a methodology because you can't always be stopping and explaining.
Right.
You have to be able to say, hey, I need puppet. So they go up puppet. I need 3-4. So I don't need to say this is 3-4 because they know it. Mm-hmm. And they go, Coach Ruth, do you see that top spin? It was 3-4. So it's a way for, for them to feel good about things. And I can tell you, I've got one parent has 3 kids that I train. One is 5, one is 7, and one is 10. And probably the 5 is probably the best because she's seeing what the other 2 have done or not done. And she can jump rope, and I swear, when she first jumped rope for the time, her mother thought she had won a gold medal at the Olympics. Because most parents at that age, at 10 and under, they really have no clue of what those kids can do. I think at 12 and 14, parents start thinking they might know, and that doesn't become dangerous to me because most parents, when I'm training a 5-year-old, they go, Ruth, she can't do that. And I go, she just practiced and she's doing 10. Emma, in March, could do 1 pass to herself. She did 34 last week in her house. 1. I mean, you got to be able to, and I think the thing is, in any type of program that you have, and especially this virtually, if you don't have energy and you're dealing with that age group, I mean, even you think about this 18 and 19-year-old, they want you to get excited. I actually had a general manager who used to organize the Canadian Football League, Gary Carroll and John Ralston.
Okay.
They were the owners of the Pro League that I coached in Dallas. I learned so much from him, and I had some players that were playing on my pro team from LSU say, Coach Ruth, why weren't you like this at LSU? I said, because I didn't have a role model that was saying, this is what you do in practice, and when you get to competition, it's game time. You get excited, you don't be breaking your clipboards, you don't give ugly words, you don't sit down and pout, you figure it. And I can tell you this, I went back and I coached at Iowa, and I enjoyed the game so much more. So I think that role model, okay, so every one of my programs, so anybody who goes up through the ranks, in order for me to train them, which I still train about 6 to 8 kids, I used to have like 20 to 24 in that age group, but as they graduate and go on, then these younger kids, B.Y.O.P kids, they become Go kids, they come back and mentor. If they don't mentor, I don't train them. They've got to give back, because in most cases, most kids don't understand what paying it forward is. But that's how I've kind of gotten through that. But you got to have mentors.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, I mean, that's so important. And I think there's so many people that go through this sport that just take, and then they disappear off the face of the map. You know what I mean? And it's really all about giving back. And really, your program and the thought process behind it is really the seed of where the sport begins. So, like, is there any age restrictions on it? Like you said, you had an 18-month-old. That's insane. My daughter's 5 months old. I'm setting expectations right now. She's there in 17, in 12 months. So, but like, is there any, is it usually you start with a 3 years old, 4 years old, or is it just kind of like it depends on the parents?
Well, I would say this. Yes, that's the most important, is the parent, because I can train a 4-year-old if I have the right parent. Okay, now
Right.
The right parent can be either one that is a former athlete, but then you have to be careful that they're not putting extra demands.
Right.
Or someone who never, like Emma's mother, she's never jump roped in her life. And she said not only has she gotten in better shape, she's also helping her son with basketball. So to go back to what's the time frame? How much? Okay, the 18-month, I spent 5 minutes once a week. That's it. That's all the attention span.
Right.
So I think it depends on the age group, but BYOP is 10 and under.
Got it. Okay.
And I have a breakdown of 5 through 7 and 8 through 10.
Right.
If an 8-year-old comes in, like Emma came into my BYOP in March. She came in at 8-year-old. However, I didn't think she probably would stay there, because those kids have been with me 5 years. So that she went back to the 7-year-old group, and it's a basic fundamental skills, learning those things. It's like we said, catch below your knee, wrist, thumbs, hands. So it's like the terminology, and then they have that, and the parents don't have to worry about coaching them. They're reinforcing that terminology. However, though, what happens is you get to a point with the home training program, there's a lot of things in there that 11 to 12 and 13 could use.
Right.
Because they don't have those fundamental movement patterns. Because somehow, okay, we know this. In D1 athletics in USA, 5% of the athletes all coaches know about. 95% need to know, and they need help to figure out where to go to college. This is how I relate it in youth volleyball. 5% are going to play club because they are two things. They're tall and they're strong. I didn't say coordinated. They're tall and they're strong.
Yeah, okay.
So what happens is a lot of the kids I have go to club, and the coaches say, Ruth, hey, your kids are the best skilled, but they're not big and they're not strong. So it's almost like there's not an in-between. So I can tell you my experiences in Poland with 5 other people from other countries. Because mini volleyball is huge there. It's mini volleyball to me. I think there's a lot of merit to it. You have to define what it really is. And in this country, as well as I do, there's a lot to do with the dollar sign.
Sure.
So therefore, what are you going to do? You're going to put 6 kids on the court that are 6 years old. Well, you know what happens. We know, serve, ace, right? Oh, bump over. So I'm training Emma. I watch her on Zoom on Saturday. She plays in a league, not club, but in a league. And I said, Emma, this is what I want you to do. Think about where those players are on the other side of the net. And if your coach is having you pass it back over the net because someone in the front court doesn't understand, you can use 3 hits on the side. Find a spot that you can score points.
Mm-hmm.
So what she's learning now is the strategy. So when she practices at her home, her mom put up a net and we use noodles.
Yeah.
So she learns to serve between those noodles because it's something she can do at home. And so when you really think about it, I can teach tacticals. I mean, I don't know if you saw an Art of Coaching, but she can go and I says, okay, Emma, you got your virtual screen? Yep. Okay. Now you need to change it and you need to go on regular and okay, show us what you do on your online course. She goes, I go here and she's got her iPad up here and showing you how to do it. And so I think if you're going to use technology, which she does, she videotapes at least 2 times a week for me in Technique, but it's now Huddle because Huddle bought Technique. She sends the video to me via link. She comments on how the things she does good and the things she needs to work on. And I watch it, I comment. And then when we get back on our session the next week, we review it. So she's learning. And now I see what's happening is when I watched the game on Saturday, the coach was having her demonstrate to the other players. So now what we're doing is it's like Doug said one time, he says, Ruth, what do you think about BYOP? And I said, 60% of my parents go on to coach recreation. Think of that, 60%, and some coach 2 teams. Whereas like when soccer started here, once you ran out of all the foreign coaches, nobody wanted to play for American coaches because at that time, most Americans didn't know, right?
Right.
So most recreational teams are coached by parent. It's like Danielle Scott calls me and says, Ruth, I know you coached soccer in college. I'm getting ready to, and my daughter's going to be a soccer player. And she goes, I said, Danielle, you're calling me because I told you that Dr. Pepper used to sponsor clinics that Pele and I used to do. I said, this is what you need to do. GOOGLE. She goes, Ruth, you're telling me to Google? And I said, yeah, you go and look to see how to teach the soccer skills. I'm not going to tell you how to teach the soccer skills. So what's happened, she did that because somebody dropped out and she still wanted her kid to play. So now what you're doing is if 60% of these parents are teaching rec, now they're not going to probably be the 12 or 13 coach, but hey, they can do recreation. It's better than having all 10 of those parents on the side coaching the kid. So what I did when we practiced our first time at BYOP, because I told you we don't have competition teams,
right?
But I wanted to go see what it was like. And this was in 2013. What happened was I made every parent have to coach, assistant coach, and call lines.
Mm-hmm.
Every parent. And then when they're off to the side in the stands, they needed to cheer. They couldn't say in or out. They couldn't argue with the referee, and they couldn't tell the coach that was over there to sub their kid.
Genius.
So what you've done is you've created, and this is what I tell Doug, it's the coaches of the future.
Yeah. And I guess that's I mean, a good question. I when I talked to Russ Rose and Kevin Hambley and all the other coaches in Canada here, at the university levels, parents obviously get brought up at some point or another. And, I know what happens on a club side. So what sort of horror stories do you have on the 4-year-old aspect of parents being maybe too engaged?
Well, I would say this, the first session we have, whether it was online or in person, because in March, we were still online for just 2 weeks, and then we went and moved our program online. I think one of the most important things is parents learn that they are not to answer any questions. Okay?
Yeah.
It's not about them. It's
right.
about the kids.
Sure, of course.
Talk to you, and Sarah's 7 years old. She goes, Coach Ruth, I'm not going to be able to come tonight because my mom has to work. And I said, okay, so why don't you have your dad come? She says, Coach Ruth, my dad doesn't know how to toss the ball. He doesn't know the drills. He can't come. I said, you need to bring him and you need to teach him. So he came that night. All of a sudden he tried to tell her what to do. And I said, Sarah, go tell your dad how to toss the ball, how he needs to catch the ball, and that he doesn't throw it back to you, he bounces it so that you can move your feet and get behind it and catch it. So it's funny because Dave Brigio, who did he's done 22 of my podcasts. We have 22 more to go. And he said to me, he says, Ruth, everybody in the country is saying no parents, and you're saying you can't come without your parent. I would say this, that I think that parents, the one parent that are the toughest, or they're what I call the overzealous, okay? I'm not saying helicopter, it's overzealous, okay? They're trying to create an atmosphere where they think they need to move the kids' feet, and if you have a methodology, and a lot of parents will say, well, Ruth, why can't I say this? I said, you don't need to say that. Wrist, thumbs, hands, arms away from you, legs and arms. Get behind the ball. I mean, why do I need to come up with more things? Because they're only 4 and 5 years old. I know last summer, 2019, I had a 4-year-old. Okay, her mom was a volleyball player. She played for one of my players. And she goes, Ruth, I promise you won't have any problem with her. And I said, well, she's pretty young. Usually I will do 5-year-olds when we do a B.Y.O.P certification. So she came, and all the time she was looking over the bleachers. And I said to her, Ellie, what are you looking at? She goes, I'm looking at my unicorn. And I said, Ellie, come on. Let's go put the unicorn out of your bags, let it sit up, and you remember that unicorn is watching you all the time. And her mom said, Ruth, oh my goodness, she's paying attention. And I said, well, we'll see how long. So then I had to move the unicorn over inside the ball cart on the side in the zipper, because the unicorn needed to watch her. And I said, Ellie, the unicorn's watching you. You better move your feet. So it's like, how are you going to relate to get a kid to do something? And then what happens is with the parent, I think that the parents that usually email me are probably interesting enough that a parent will email you, says, my daughter needs to do some advanced serving. I said, well, how old is your daughter? She said, well, she's 6. And I said, I'm not even doing anything but basic lift and contact at age 6. I don't think she needs to do advanced serving. So I think it's more than ever, Dave, it's educating the parents that it's okay. However, I do believe this, that the parents that come out of BYOP are going to push club coaches to become better at what they do.
Sure.
You know as well as I do, if we're all life learners, and I'm still learning, because I can say I learned something from a 5-year-old. It's like Emma said. I said, Emma, I really, really liked Leap, but you know how hard it is to watch a movie in a different language? She goes, Coach Ruth, all you had to do is put the captions on.
Fair enough.
I said, really? But you know what? I said, Emma, you know what it did for me? I watched the movie very closely to watch how the people interacted. And then I got to see that person really was Flo with her hand on her shoulder, talking to Long Ping that her team did good. So it was, but I've seen it like 3 times. But my point is, you always are learning something from young kids. I think that every single club coach, every coach, should have to coach at every age level, at least for 1 or 2 weeks, and at least in competition, be an assistant. Because I think it brings you back down to reality, that it all matters about the few basic things you say. It's, okay, how did you do? How was your passing today? Did you get behind the ball? It's specific things about that, because I told Emma, I said, and I tell all the players that I train, don't even talk to me about the scoreboard. Don't even, well, Coach Ruth, you know what? Well, my team is telling me I have to pass a 2.3. And I said, the reason why you're not enjoying the game as much is because you're putting pressure on yourself to be able to perform at some statistic or some, okay, what happens? Why are kids making so many errors? Because they're afraid they're going to be taken out.
Sure, yeah.
So now you're talking about, okay, at least at the youth level, like Emma, they do their rotation. Okay, do I really like that? No, but you know what? At least everybody gets in, right? But I want to have more formations. So I think the tactical side is probably most. But let me tell you real quick. So now my other project is RNN Sports Gym. It's a virtual gym for PE teachers. That basically you come in and you learn everything you need to do about volleyball and all the videos and everything's inside the virtual gym. So that's really what I've been working on for about 4 months now. And so that ties everything together, because it's like I told my creative director, I told her, I said, who's your best friend? She says, Mary. And she says, Mary comes to you and says, what's your favorite subject? She goes, math. She goes, I need a math teacher because she's out at COVID. Okay. I said, Beth, okay. She comes back to you the next week. She says, the PE teacher just got COVID. Can you take over? And she goes, well, yeah, I like to play games. I said, Oh no, you can't go in with 6-year-olds to play games. You've got this, she's in the middle of the volleyball unit. You need to teach passing. She goes, then I'm taking BYOP 101.
So sorry, go ahead. No, keep going.
No, it's just that I think that what's happened is somebody gets stuck to teach something.
Mm-hmm.
In PE, why do we have 50 and 60 kids, whereas in a classroom you might have 20 or 30?
Right.
And I said, went to one of my schools to do a physical fitness, but it was volleyball, and there were 8 classes, and each of them had 40 in them. Luckily, I had one of my kids' mom was very disciplined to keep them in, and there were balls all over the place. And it's like, to be a PE teacher these days, you better be giving them a vaccine, because they're right up front, close to those kids, trying to keep them engaged, and you got 40 and 50 kids in the gym. But I just think that I'm in a point in my career where at 50 you learn one very important thing, and that's you learn to say no. Okay, that's one. The second thing you learn, which you haven't learned yet, that there's not 48 hours in the day.
I haven't learned that yet.
I know, that's exactly right. So once you learn those couple things, and you learn, like I need 8 to 10 hours sleep, but somebody's texting me from Germany, and it's 11 o'clock there. But I think you've got to put yourself in a place where you want to give back. Mm-hmm. You must pay it forward. It's like somebody asked me when Black Lives Matter came out, they said, Ruth, are you going to make a statement? I said, I've been making a statement my entire career. Mm-hmm. Where was everybody in the 70s when I was recruiting, probably the majority of Black athletes,
Right.
So I think the important thing is parents need to learn, but they've also got to be just like coaches, that just because you can go on the internet doesn't mean everything you see is correct. I mean, I say 3 things. Is it biomechanically sound? Is it anatomically correct? Does it make sense? Then it's probably correct. Mm-hmm. So if I were a junior coach, I'd be taking an anatomy class. I'd be taking a psychology class. I'd be taking those classes and not judge my progress based on me winning AAUs. That
Right.
doesn't mean you necessarily know everything. I don't know everything. I learn every day. I mean, why do you think I'm doing these all over the world? Because I'm going to learn what other people are doing, because there's always something you can bring back. I know for me, if and when I can get back on the court, because I haven't been there since March, I have some ideas about how I want to run some competition for 10 and under. And I think it's something that always involves mentoring, because young kids need someone above them so that they can feel they're their role model. But we must teach mentors how valuable they are. It's like, well, you remember when Charles Barkley was interviewed and they said, well, you're a mentor and you're a role model people. He said, no, I'm not. Well, yes, you're on TV. Yes, you are, whether you want to be or not. So I think that younger people need to recognize everything they do is being emulated by the young kids. It's
for sure.
They throw their towel. They think that.
Yeah, and that's something we do in my club is, not this year because we're stuck in our houses, but we usually have a big sister, little sister, where our U18 team will partner up with our U13 team and go to their practice once a month type of thing, and just try to connect with one athlete, and yeah, we've had a lot of good feedback on it, but I mean, my push here in Alberta and in British Columbia and BC is actually doing a really good job on it, is just trying to have leagues at U12 and U11. Like our teams come down to the US at whatever, U13, U14, and we get the crap kicked out of us, but and not that we're bad teams, it's just that these kids have been playing for 4 years already, and this is the first year for us, and it doesn't necessarily have to be all about winning and losing. And it was actually quite interesting, regarding the parent comment, and I won't use coaches' names, but this NCAA Div 1 coach was coaching one of his athletes whose parent, one of the parents was a pro athlete. Yeah. And he said that that parent was the most headache parent he's ever had in his career, and it was like, wow, like, you would think that pro athlete and, wouldn't be so involved, have their, a helicopter type of effect, right? So it's really interesting. And when I went down to Pittsburgh for the Final Four at the convention that you were speaking at, I went to a dinner with one of the companies, and the thing about the States is that when I told them, I was like, yeah, I'm from Canada. I run a nonprofit volleyball club up there. They're like, what? Nonprofit? What? And in 99% of, or I'm just throwing numbers out here, 95% of kind of American clubs are for profit. And I don't know the tax like stuff and all that stuff, but it's like, they just couldn't believe it. Well, I would say 98% of clubs here in Canada are nonprofit, while 2% are for profit, and it's just a different aspect. And I'm jealous of the States, to be honest, because I think everything you guys do, we're 5 to 10 years behind, depending on what it is, and I
know one thing you're ahead of us.
What's that?
And that is that you guys buy more of my soft light ball from Baden, the light ball that we tested.
Okay.
You buy more of those than people do here, because the problem here is Emma. She was practicing her passing, and I knew she had ordered a ball. And I said to her, show me the ball you're using. And she held it up, and I said, oh no, that's not the ball.
Right.
She goes, Coach Ruth, do you know how bad this hurts? And she ended up, I met her at a school, left it outside the school during COVID, and she goes, the difference between, okay, if I have to say, what do I think the average girl play is probably about, I would say 70 to 75% of the girls that play volleyball are what I consider prissy cheerleaders, okay? Because it's kind of a social thing. Now, it's not like when we grew up, like you were tomboys, you played baseball with boys and basketball and football. But now, and I say prissy in the sense that it really is a girly thing. The really, things you put on your hair, all that stuff. We do the bows and all, and I think the one thing about that is if you're going to convince people at an age of 5 and 6, this is what they said, Coach Ruth, that one ball, that doesn't look like a volleyball. Okay, we gotta make it look like a volleyball. Oh, we like the way it feels. Okay, I said, can you still practice at home? Yes. Okay, what do you think of this ball? Because I use an oversized ball and a smaller ball for both ages, because the hand-eye coordination in the tracking of the ball, like when I'm teaching hitting for 9s, I'll use a bigger ball, because then I can focus on other things besides contact. And then for the little ones, I use a bigger ball for passing, because it's much easier for them to be able to have more success. So if you think of when you organize things, it must be success driven, and success to most people is how many wins and losses you have and what's the scoreboard.
Right.
So if you think of success based on I did this better than what I did before, I'm faster. We use vert, and the highest jumper I've got is an 8-year-old, and that's Daniel Scottsdard at 14.7 inches. I know what a 5-year-old can jump. And it's fun because they do their own, they got their, their iPhone, and it comes up with what they jump. I think you've got to find things that really stimulate kids to stay active.
Yes, correct.
The fact is we specialize way too early in USA. Early.
Sorry, you do.
And so all the kids that I train, they play all around. They learn how to set, they learn how to hit, they learn to come in from the back court. It's like in 1973, everybody criticized me because I had Flo Hyman set for me from the back court. I mean, we had a problem when she had set it over because she was back row, because she was 6'5", right? And her hands were above the net. But I said, she's playing on the national team. What is the one thing I could do to help her better understand the game? Setting. Plus, you know what? If you're a setter, you better be quick. So then I knew in my mind, I'm going to make her quicker because she's going to set. So I think you have to look at, and actually John Foreman he interviewed me on this about specialization. I think in order to have the love and the passion for the sport, you've got to better understand it. If you better understand it, you don't get narrow, because I asked Ari, this was in 2013, because that's when Libero was first coming out. And I was in Japan, he was coaching for Pioneer, and Danielle was playing for him. And I says, why is it that the Libero is great at passing and she's not very good at defense? And why is it the defense is really good at defense but not very good at passing? I said, Ari, we never had that separation. We had to do both.
Yeah.
So that tells me that during the training session, that probably libero's passing more than she's playing defense, and the defense person is doing more defensive passing. And that's my theory, because I think if you look at anything logically, I mean, I'm a visionary, an innovator, and I like to be looking out here, but if you need me to narrow my focus down, I'll do it, but I really don't want to stay there very long. So
Right.
I think my attention span is great for this generation, because I'm pretty active in it. Somebody asked me, Ruth, do you do a WESH drill? I said, I never did one in my life. I said, I couldn't even tell you what it is. But I said, what I do is I'll teach a skill and I'll progress them through as they get better. And as they get better, you put them in a small group, then you have put some competition to it, and you create your own drills. I mean, I call it design, organize, and execute. So I think that people get into, like even for young kids, they're wanting to do this past set. No, let them feel good about something first. Why you want them to be in a situation where they don't feel good about anything? But they always will feel good with their friends, because why is it that most players, and especially girls, be with their friends?
Yeah.
But you know what most of the players that I train say? Ruth, they're at 7, I don't want to play with that team. And I said, why not? That's a great experience for you. They don't know what they're doing. And they told me to pass the ball over the net and not pass the ball to the setter. And I go, that's because they might not have learned that. Maybe you can help them be that way. So again, now you're talking about the kids helping other kids get educated too. That's
really, yeah. And so here in Canada, like our big initiative from Volleyball Canada right now is it's called Smash Ball here. And and they're really making a big charge on this. And, it's run on a badminton court, which totally, I get it, and it's more of a, like, you know what it is. You toss a ball over the net, you catch it, and then you kind of like, you throw a set, and there's different variations of it. So we've never really had anything set in place. We've had all these different sort of programs that were hit and miss, and Smash Ball seems to be, kind of really sort of connecting now with lots of clubs throughout the country. But I mean, your program, do you have teams in Canada that do it? Do you have, you were talking about Germany and stuff?
I had like 2 people that have been interested in coming down here, but then that was during COVID.
Interesting.
But I mean, I'll take anybody in that program. I mean, 2 people up there on the west side were very, very interested. And what happens is, I think that, like someone will call me and say, oh, Ruth, you know what? I'm not interested. And I'm thinking to myself, why are you calling me? Okay. And because I already do everything you do.
Sure.
Okay. But why and I base a lot of that on me, how do I do it, and how am I basing it based on teaching? Mm-hmm. And I think that, you think of this. When Russ, Terry, myself, when we all went to school, we had either master's degrees or doctorate in physical education. So when you really think about that now, you might find 5% of college coaches with that background.
Right.
Every other background. Okay, now you go down to club. Most of them some haven't even played high school. Some haven't even played college. And just because it's like Danielle said, Ruth, just because I played in 5 Olympics doesn't mean I'm a good teacher. You're talking about a 5-time Olympian that never really had a major injury. And she's saying, I don't know everything. However, I said, you do know this. You do know the tactical side. And depending on who you had Brian, who was fundamentally sound. You had Ari, who was fundamentally sound. You had me, who's fundamentally sound. And I think what happens is you can't take away the skills. I mean, how do I tell a kid, if I told a kid at 5 years old they can pass with their arms outside their body? Oh my goodness, I would never, ever get rid of this.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
And I was just listening to somebody talking about they just made a midline versus outside. Well, you know what? The kids that I have that I've coached for like 5 years and they're now 10, 11, I'm teaching them outside. But by and large, you got to get kids to understand how to move their feet. And I use jump rope. Jump rope is one of the biggest things that I do, and I do combinations, and I have a footwork thing. But I would say this, if you ask me what is one of the things that I think that could benefit, and one that I would do now, is I would take and I would do 4s, but I would have 3 players same age and 1 player that's at least 3 to 4 years older, because you need one person there that's going to lead them. That one person that's going to say, get the pass up to me.
Right.
Instead of pass it over. I think you learn that, and then what you do is you're basically having them as a stationary setter.
Yeah.
And maybe what you require, it's almost like mixed sixes, reverse sixes.
Right.
Where you guys that have to touch. Then what you do is you gradually move them into other concepts of, maybe I do 2-on-2, 2 parents and 2 kids. But the parents can't serve it, parents can't set it, the parents can't hit it over. So, I mean, some of those concepts, because what happened was in March, we had 2 sessions, 2 regular sessions, and I started what we call a technical and tactical area, where I'm now teaching what lines are good. Ball's got to, here's how we rotate, and I put 3 sets of antennas so that we got 3 courts. All right, now we're going to play a parent and a kid against a parent and a kid, but the parent can't remember, can't serve it. And then we rotate around, so they learn that they're rotating like this, even though we got 3 separate courts. They now work with a different parent. They now learn that they can pass it up, parent catches it, and they can hit it over or they can pass it over, whichever level of skill that they're at. So I think you can't move to the next level with just kids. When you're talking about the 5%. The 5% can.
Yeah.
But how about the 95%? I think because I noticed in your club in ACE, you're down, you'd go to 13, but I didn't see 12s, 11s, 10s.
Yeah. So we have not like on a team aspect, we have a program called Mini Aces that we run 8 to 12-year-olds all at once. So it's kind of a variation of smash ball and stuff like that, and that's why this really interests me. This bring your own parent thing.
You need to come down and get certified.
Yeah.
And you will be the only one in Canada that's certified. Now, someone may use stuff, but they're not certified. It's like I say to anybody else. And the fact is, the big thing is I am accessible to every single one of my BYOP instructors. I think the toughest part is instructor gets certified, not a club.
Right.
So almost all my instructors also either coach, they're on a board, or they own their own club.
Right.
I have only one that's strictly just a teacher. And I think there's always an advantage. Now, like for instance, my guy in Edmond, Oklahoma, he's going to start boys because I've not really done boys.
Right.
It's not that I don't want to do boys, but it's like in the United States.
You play football or basketball?
Well, that, and, predominantly, we've always had, men's pro leagues in the U.S. This is the first time we've had women's since I coached.
Right.
We're talking about a 10 to 12 year lapse.
Yeah.
And now in 2023, Dave Soji's coming out with Love, the new league. So there's the new pro league too. So I just think to get this, it really touches an entirely different culture. Now, I have some friends in some other countries that I always know when he's mentioned my program, because I'll get friends that speak a little bit English, and I'll say, okay, you must have mentioned my name in your last FIVB certificate. He says, yes, I did. He said, but in some countries it wouldn't work because the parents, aren't
right.
necessarily engaged. But I think that if you get to a point where you got parents educated, just think of that, 60% of those parents are educated. Look at how much more organized youth sports at 10 and under would be, because you're now mentoring every age group.
Yeah, and I'm gonna play devil's advocate here a little bit, because obviously in my role too, dealing with parents is a huge thing.
Uh-huh.
I love, everyone says educate parents. I love to educate parents, but I also feel with just human nature, the ones that need to be educated the most are the ones that don't listen. you know what I mean? Like, it goes on deaf ears, right? Like everyone else is like, oh yeah, let's do this, and they get it. And then there's there's that a bit that's kind of in between where they kind of like sometimes step out of the boundary box and it's like, come back in here. You know what I mean? But then there's the ones that are like totally out to lunch. You know what I mean? Yeah.
BYOP, we're educating the parents, but they're not running the show, and they're not answering the questions, and they're not running the drills. You're educating them about the skill development and all the positive things that their kid does.
Yeah.
Our motto is pink and black, don't talk back.
Fair enough.
And a lot of parents say, hey, Ruth, you know what? My kid's making their bed now. They're being more disciplined and I say structured because it sounds more positive. I said, but if you were more structured at home, I could teach more about volleyball because if I see a kid roll their eyes, oh boy, they don't do it twice.
Right.
That's not acceptable here.
Yeah.
So you have to, and it's like I said, like Randy has probably the most successful program I have. He came and got certified 2 years ago in Edmond. He's on the board of a club and he coaches 12 and under. And he's also a principal in a school district. Excuse me, human resource director in a school district. He told me that when he did his 12 and unders last year, their tryouts, 80% of the kids were former BYOP players because their skills were so much better than all the people that came in.
Interesting.
So if you look at that, and he said his board said, we got to do this 3 to 4 times a year because it's an 8-week program. And I think when you really think about that, and Ryan Mitchell at Lovejoy High School, very, very successful, coach of the year, he said, I want my parents to better understand the process. So by the time they get to high school, they really do see the big picture. So I think you're educating them in a very different way than what most people think about educating. But I can tell you this, all the lessons I've been doing since 1995 in the private lesson, because I've been doing private lessons.
Yeah.
Every parent shags balls. Every parent shags balls. Every single parent. They're in my training session.
Right.
They're not there coaching, but I say the hardest ones are the ones that have been through BYOP with me. Then they go kids. They have a hard time turning that part off.
Right.
Because they've been allowed to be part of that. I got some of the parents that can serve balls and I have them hit balls.
Sure.
Because they've been with me for, I've got one kid that's been with me since she's 3.5 years old and she's 16 now.
That is awesome.
And you know what they do? They have a much better respect for their parents, and I think right now, I think that's important.
Oh, amen on that, Ruth. There's so much more to sport and what you do with this program and what we do as coaches that affects the long term of society. And I love that piece right there of. Like making your bed at home, and it's funny because I did 4 years in the military, and I would come home and I would make sure that there was a 40-degree angle on every single bed sheet curve and stuff like that, and my parents got a good kick out of that. But it's it's just learning that long lost art. I hate to say it, of day-to-day accountability.
Well, it's interesting. They have a tote bag when they get in. The parent gets a T-shirt, the player gets a T-shirt, the kid gets a tote bag, They get a DVD, and they get a bag tag. On that bag tag, it tells them exactly what they need to bring to practice. Knee pad, towel, water. And one kid one time said, my mom didn't do my shirt. I said, wait a second. Is that on your bag tag? You got to remember it. So teaching that accountability, and then I have the older girls help the younger ones learn how to do their vert jump.
Right.
I have the older girls do this. In the older girls, we're talking about 9-year-old to 5-year-olds. So we're not talking about 18. Now, all of the mentors that I have in all my programs, they have to take my courses.
Right.
Because it's like you learn the same keywords and you learn to be engaged. You don't learn to be, I call them pole leaners, right? They
right.
The pole, never coach. But I would say that, you learn that aspect and you've got to be able to teach them a lot of things. Like, for instance, like Emma telling me, I said, okay, Emma, now tell everybody, did you know how to put all the tabs on your iPad to know to go to Art of Coaching and in this place and to do 3 tabs? She goes, well, my mom had to show me that. And I said, okay. So there are lots of things that you learn from your mom, right? And I said, but the thing is, you should hear when someone talks about how much fun they have with their parent. That sells the whole program, because that is quality time where the kid actually is the center and the parents are engaged in every aspect, but it's all about the kids. So the kids come up with different cheers, the parents come up with different cheers. The kids get to come up with all the names, they get to have all the parents do things. So when they're playing at the end, maybe 5 minutes at the end, I have them usually do 2 parents, 2 kids. The person who doesn't score the most points, they got to decide what the parents do. So they got to do cartwheels. Or they got to do, I'm a star. So the kids get to do that. So they get to direct the parents. And that's a very different situation than a kid ever has. Now, they may be saying, Mom, give me $10, but it's not, Mom, go do the dishes. You know, it may, Mom, I don't want to do the dishes. But in this, the player actually says, okay, Mom, you need to toss the ball higher so I have time that I can track the ball because you're running underneath the net and catching the ball. And if you toss it low, I can't see you. So I get them to think about those things. So you're always encouraging life lessons. You're encouraging, and bottom line is, you have volleyball as your vehicle. And you have to utilize that.
Yeah.
And you have to encourage the parents once in a while too. Because, but not too much, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I hear you. Well, you know, I think I need to make a trip down to Texas. So
Okay.
I think that is in the cards, and once this COVID stuff gets itself figured out. But I can go on forever. So I'm just going to say thank you so much for your time, Ruth. I really want to actually pick your mind more. So I'm going to actually just, when I go offline here, I'm going to stay online. So don't leave. But for this segment, I'm going to say, what's that? Sorry?
Teresa Maxwell, is she still coaching?
Who?
She was Teresa Maxwell. She used to be the coach at University of Calgary.
She is. I'm not sure. Well, she's not the coach at University of Calgary. It's Christine Briggs is the new coach as of this year. So, but I don't know if Maxwell is still coaching in the community. Who?
How about Lauren Zawala? Is he around in the world? Lauren Zawala?
Name hasn't crossed my desk. How about
this
that?
is right before you're born. How about Moo Park?
Again,
How about Moo Park?
I'm only 35 years old, Ruth.
Wow. Yeah, but Moo Park was my first national team coach. He coached USA. He's in Canada.
Oh, okay.
So you're going to have to look him up.
I'm gonna have to look him up. Yeah. Well, Ruth, I appreciate your time. We will be posting this on YouTube and Facebook and LinkedIn, and that's a microphone, and all over the place. So I'll make sure to send you the link so that you have access to it. But we'll chat when we're offline. So thanks for being with us today, Ruth.
You're very welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
No problem.